Today, we are diving into the big ideas from James Clear's game-changing book, Atomic Habits. We're going to get into this really powerful concept, how you can get these incredible, remarkable results, not from some massive, crazy effort, but from tiny, almost invisible changes that you make every single day.
You know, it really all kicks off with this one question. How does a person or a team go from being just totally average to absolutely world-class? We usually think it's all about some big, dramatic breakthrough moment. But what if the secret is actually something way smaller? Something you could literally start doing today.
All right, to really get this, let's look at one of the best examples out there, the story of British cycling. Seriously, it's the perfect way to see this whole idea in action.
Now, to get how amazing their turnaround was, you first have to understand just how bad they were. I mean, for 100 years, professional cycling in Great Britain was basically a running joke. They had only won a single Olympic gold medal since 1908. Think about that. And in 110 years, not one British cyclist had ever won the Tour de France. It was so bad that one of the top bike manufacturers actually refused to sell them bikes because they were afraid it would hurt their brand if other pros saw the British team using their gear. Ouch.
Well, everything started to shift in 2003 when they hired this guy, Dave Brailsford. He came in with this totally different philosophy that he called the aggregation of marginal gains. The idea was actually pretty simple, but they were relentless with it. Break down every single tiny thing that goes into riding a bike, and then just improve each little piece by 1%. He was convinced that all those tiny gains would eventually add up to something huge.
And when I say they took this idea seriously, I mean they went to some incredible lengths.
Yeah, they did the obvious stuff, like making the bike seats more comfortable and rubbing alcohol on the tires to get better grip. But then, they went further. They looked at details nobody else was even thinking about. They hired a surgeon to teach the athletes the best way to wash their hands to avoid colds. They tested which massage gels led to the fastest muscle recovery. They even painted the inside of their team truck white just so they could spot tiny bits of dust that might mess with their finely tuned bikes. I mean, no detail was too small.
So, did it work? Oh yeah, the results were just staggering. Only 5 years after Brailsford took over, at the 2008 Beijing Olympics, the team won an insane 60% of the available gold medals. 4 years after that, in London, they set 9 Olympic records and 7 world records. And the Tour de France, you know, the race they hadn't won in over a century, they won it 5 times in a 6-year stretch. This was not a fluke. This was the result of hundreds of tiny 1% improvements all adding up over time. And this brings us right to the heart of the book. The idea that habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. It's just like how money multiplies with compound interest, the effects of your habits multiply as you repeat them. And this graph shows it perfectly. See that top line, the one showing 1% improvement? It doesn't look like much at first, right? But just look at how over time, that curve just shoots upward. So here's the mind-blowing math on this. If you get just 1% better at something each day for a year, you won't be 365% better at the end. No, because of that compounding effect, you'll end up 37 times better than when you started. A tiny, almost unnoticeable daily improvement leads to an absolutely massive, massive result. Okay, but if it's that simple, why do we all struggle with this so much? Why is it so hard? Well, that brings us to this really common and, let's be honest, super frustrating experience that the book calls the Valley of Disappointment.
Here's the thing. We expect our progress to be a straight line. You go to the gym for a few days, you expect to see a difference. You practice an instrument for a month, you expect to sound better. But in reality, as this graph shows, it just doesn't work that way. The most powerful results of any compounding process are delayed. So you get this gap between what we think should be happening and what's actually happening. That gap, that's the Valley of Disappointment. And that's the exact moment when most people give up, because it feels like what they're doing isn't working.
I absolutely love this quote from Jacob Riis because it just nails this idea. Imagine a stonecutter just hammering away at a rock 100 times and nothing. But on the 101st blow, the rock splits in two. Now, was it that last hit that did all the work? Of course not. It was all the hits that came before it. All your hard work in that Valley of Disappointment isn't being wasted. It's just being stored. So how in the world do you push through that valley? Well, it takes a really big shift in how you think about getting better. The book argues that we need to pretty much forget about goals and focus on something else entirely, our systems. So what's the difference really? A goal is the result you want.
right? Win the championship, publish the book. A system is the process that leads you to those results. The daily workout, the writing schedule. Here's the thing. Winners and losers often have the exact same goals. The thing that separates them is their system. A goal also kind of puts happiness off into the future. I'll be happy when I achieve X. But with a system, you can feel good every single time you just follow your process.
And this right here is probably one of the most powerful lines in the entire book. If you remember one thing, make it this. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. You can dream as big as you want, but at the end of the day, your results are going to come from the quality of your daily habits.
Okay, so if systems are the key, what's the best way to build one that actually sticks? This brings us to what I think is the deepest, most powerful idea in Atomic Habits, that real, lasting change has to start with identity. It's not about what you want, it's about who you want to become.
So picture behavior change like an onion. It's got 3 layers. On the very outside, you've got your outcomes. That's the result, like losing weight. The middle layer is your processes. That's what you do, like your workout routine. But at the very core, the deepest layer, that's your identity. That's what you believe about yourself.
And here's the mistake pretty much all of us make. We try to change from the outside in. We start with the result we want, and we try to force ourselves to do the behavior. But the problem is, if our underlying belief about who we are doesn't change, we'll always slide back into our old habits. Real, lasting change happens when you start from the inside out. You decide you want to become the type of person who is healthy.
This example just makes it so clear. Imagine someone offers you a cigarette. If you say, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit," you still see yourself as a smoker who's trying to change. Your identity is fighting your goal. But if you say, "No thanks, I'm not a smoker," well, that's a total identity shift. Not smoking is just a natural part of who you are now. It's such a small difference in words, but it reflects a massive difference in belief.
So how do you actually build this new identity? I mean, you can't just wake up one day and decide you're a totally different person. No, you prove it to yourself, one tiny action at a time. And the book gives us this amazing way to think about it. Every single action you take is like casting a vote for the type of person you want to be. Every time you go for a run, you're casting a vote for "I am a runner." Every time you write one paragraph, you're casting a vote for "I am a writer." Now, 1 or 2 votes don't decide an election, right? But as you keep casting those votes, day after day, the evidence starts to pile up, and you start to believe it. Your identity actually begins to change.
So it all really comes down to this super simple 2-step process. First, decide what type of person you want to be. Not what you want to achieve, but who you want to be. A reader? An artist? An early riser? And second, start proving it to yourself with tiny, small wins. Don't try to write a whole book, just write 1 sentence. That's a vote. Don't worry about running a marathon, just put your running shoes on and get out the door. That's a vote.
And really, that's what we want to leave you with. This whole thing isn't about some massive, stressful life overhaul that you have to start tomorrow. It's just about the next tiny action you can take, the single, small choice that's right in front of you. So, when you think about your day ahead, what's one small vote you can cast for the person you want to become?